The red sun of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the rocky ground as Lyra walked toward the edge of her world. Her scaled hands shook as she carried the small bag that held everything she owned. Behind her, the tall spires of the Zephyrian city gleamed like silver knives against the orange sky. "Move faster, worthless one," hissed Guard Captain Vextar, his yellow eyes cold with disgust. "The sun sets soon. You must be beyond our borders before darkness comes." Lyra said nothing. What was there to say? For 7 breeding cycles, she had tried to give her mate Colfax the children he needed. 7 times she had failed. In Zephyrian society, a female who could not breed was worse than dead. She was a waste of food, water, and space. The other females in her clan had whispered about her for months. Cursed, they called her. Broken. Some even said she brought bad luck to the entire city. Now the High Council had made their decision. Exile. Cast out into the wasteland to die alone. "I gave you the best years of my life," Colfax had said when the judgment came down. "You have brought shame to my family name. I am glad to be free of you." Those words hurt more than the burns from the ceremony that had marked her as outcast. 3 parallel scars now ran down her left arm, telling any Zephyrian who saw her that. She was forbidden to return. The ground grew more rocky as they walked away from the city. Soon there would be no more water, no more shelter, no more hope. Lyra looked back one last time at the place where she had been born, where she had learned to tend the crystal gardens, where she had once been happy. "Eyes forward," Vextar snapped. "That life is over." After 2 hours of walking, they reached the marker stones that showed the edge of Zephyrian territory. Beyond lay the Badlands, where nothing grew and few creatures could survive. "This is where you stop," Vextar said. He pointed to the red rocks ahead. "Cross those stones and you can never return. The penalty for coming back is death." Lyra nodded. She understood. She picked up her bag and walked forward. Her bare feet felt the rough stone as she stepped over the border. Behind her, she heard Vextar's footsteps heading back toward the city. She was alone. The first night was the worst. Lyra found a small cave between 2 boulders and curled up inside it. The temperature dropped fast after the sun went down. Her Zephyrian body could handle cold better than most species, but she still shivered through the long hours until dawn. On the second day, she found a small pool of water caught in a rock depression. It tasted bitter, but it was wet. She filled her water container and kept walking. There was nowhere to go, but staying in one place meant certain death. By the 4th day, Lyra was getting weak. She had eaten the last of her food 2 days ago. The plants in this region were all poisonous to her kind. She knew because she had studied botany in her youth, back when she thought she might become a garden keeper instead of a breeder. 5th day, she collapsed. Lyra lay on the hot rocks, feeling her strength drain away. The red sun burned down on her scaled skin. Her water was gone. Her hope was gone. Maybe this was better, she thought. At least out here, no one would look at her with disgust. No one would whisper about her failures. She closed her eyes and waited for the end. That was when she heard the strange sound. It was not like any Zephyrian vehicle she knew. The sound was deeper, rougher. She forced her eyes open and saw something impossible in the sky above her. A human ship. Lyra had heard stories about the humans who had arrived on her world 3 years ago. They were a strange species with soft skin and no scales. They had built a settlement on the far side of the continent in the northern valleys. Most Zephyrians thought they were weak and would not survive long. But this ship was real. It was coming down toward her. The ship landed 50 meters away, sending dust and small rocks flying. Lyra tried to sit up, but was too weak. She could only watch as a door opened in the side of the craft. 3 figures came out. They were smaller than Zephyrians, with pale skin and strange hair on their heads. They wore clothes that covered most of their bodies and carried tools she did not recognize. The leader was a tall male with brown hair and green eyes. He moved with the confidence of someone used to making decisions. Behind him came another male, with yellow hair, and a female with red hair. They spoke to each other in their own language, pointing at her. Lyra could not understand the words, but their tone seemed concerned, not disgusted or afraid, just concerned. The brown-haired male walked closer. He knelt down beside her, keeping his movements slow and careful. His green eyes looked at her face, not at the exile scars on her arm. "Hello," he said in broken Zephyrian. "I and Jake. Are you hurt?" Lyra stared at him. In all her life, no one had asked her that question with such gentleness. She tried to speak, but only managed a weak croak. Jake turned to his companions and said something in human language. The red-haired female came forward with a container of water. She held it to Lyra's lips. The water was cool and clean, better than anything Lyra had tasted in days. She drank slowly, feeling strength return to her body bit by bit. "We take you." "To doctor," Jake said in his broken Zephyrian. "You safe now?" Safe. Lyra had not felt safe in years. Not since the breeding failures began. Not since the whispers started. Not since her own mate had turned his back on her. But this human male, this Jake, looked at her like she mattered. Like she was worth saving. As the humans lifted her carefully and carried her toward their ship, Lyra felt something she had not felt since her exile began. Hope. The human medical center was unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. The walls were white and clean, and bright lights made everything visible. Strange machines beeped and hummed around her as she lay on a soft bed. Dr. Ben Hayes looked at the readings on his scanner and frowned. The alien female was severely dehydrated and malnourished, but there was something else. Her body chemistry was different from other Zephyrians they had studied. "How is she doing, Doc?" Jake asked as he entered the room. He had been checking on the alien every few hours since they brought her in 2 days ago. "Better," Ben replied. "Her body is responding well to the treatments." "But Jake, I need to ask you something. Why did you bring her here?" "Lisa is furious, and half the council thinks you've lost your mind." Jake looked down at the sleeping Zephyrian. Even unconscious, her face showed signs of old pain. The scars on her arm told a story he was beginning to understand. "She was dying out there, Ben. We couldn't just leave her." "The Zephyrians cast out their own people for a reason," Ben said quietly. "What if she's dangerous? What if she's sick with something that could hurt us?" "Look at her," Jake said. "Does she look dangerous to you?" Ben had to admit she did not. The alien female was thin and weak, but there was something gentle about her features. Her large, dark eyes held intelligence, not malice. On the third day, Lyra woke up completely. She found Jake sitting in a chair beside her bed, reading something on a small device. "Hello," she said in her own language. Jake looked up and smiled. "Hello, how do you feel?" Lyra was surprised that his Zephyrian had improved. Someone had been teaching him. "Better," she replied. Then, slowly, she added in broken human speech, "Thank you." Jake's eyebrows went up. "You know our language?" "Little bit," Lyra said. "I listen. I learn fast." Over the next few days, Jake visited often. He brought her food and helped her practice human words. In return, she taught him more Zephyrian. They also communicated through drawings and simple math, which seemed to work the same for both species. During one visit, Jake showed her pictures of the human colony's farms. The images made Lyra frown. "Plants look sick," she said in her improving human speech. "Yes," Jake said sadly. "We cannot grow enough food. Soon we will have problems." Lyra studied the pictures more carefully. She recognized some of the plants from her studies back home. She also noticed something else. Soil wrong, she said. Wrong how? Lyra struggled with the human words. Finally, she asked Jake to bring her some dirt from the farms. When he returned with a small container of soil, she examined it closely, even smelling it. Missing minerals, she explained. Plants need special food in ground. Your soil has no food for plants. Jake leaned forward with interest. Can you fix it? Lyra nodded slowly. Maybe. Need to see real plants. Need to test soil properly. That. Evening, Jake called a meeting with his senior staff. The main conference room was full of worried faces. Food supplies were running low, and their latest crop had failed again. I think our guest might be able to help us, Jake began. Lisa Carter, his second-in-command, crossed her arms. The alien? Jake, she's in exile. Her own people threw her away. What makes you think she can solve our problems? She knows about plants and soil, Jake said. She identified issues with our farming that we missed. Or maybe she's lying, said Kevin Walsh, the colony's security chief. Maybe this is some kind of Zephyrian trick. Diana Ross, the chief engineer, shook her head. What would be the point? If they wanted to hurt us, they have better ways than sending one half-dead female. I think we should give her a chance, said Ben Hayes. What do we have to lose? Our lives, Lisa said sharply. Jake, I understand you feel sorry for this alien, but you're the leader of 3,000 people. You cannot risk everyone for one refugee. Jake stood up. I'm not risking anyone. I'm asking her to look at our farms. If she can help, great. If not, we're no worse off than before. The next morning, Jake took Lyra to the colony's main agricultural area. The sight made her heart sink. Rows of sick plants stretched across. Several fields, the leaves were yellow and brown. Many plants had already died. Very bad, she said quietly. Plants are starving. She knelt down and dug her hands into the soil. It felt wrong to her fingers, too loose and lacking the rich smell of healthy earth. I need materials, she told Jake. Specific rocks, some plants. From waste areas, also need containers for mixing. Jake assigned 2 colonists to help her gather what she needed. Diana Ross provided equipment for testing and mixing. Over the next 3 days, Lyra worked from dawn until dusk, creating different combinations of minerals and plant matter. Many colonists watched her with suspicion. Some made rude comments when they thought she could not understand. But Lyra ignored them and focused on her work. On the 4th day, she had prepared enough fertilizer to treat one small test field. Jake helped her spread the mixture around a section of dying wheat plants. How long before we see results? He asked. Few days, Lyra replied. Maybe 1 week. The results came faster than expected. Within 3 days, the treated plants began to show new growth. Their leaves turned from yellow to green. Within a week, they were clearly healthier than any crops the humans had grown since. Arriving on the planet, word spread quickly through the colony. People came to see the miracle field for themselves. Some looked at Lyra with new respect, but others remained suspicious. Lisa Carter was among the doubters. She cornered Jake after the weekly council meeting. This is exactly what I was afraid. Oaf, she said. You're getting too attached to this alien. People are starting to talk. Talk about what? Jake asked. About how much time you spend with her. About how you look at her. Jake, she's not human. Whatever you think you feel, it's not real. Jake felt his face get hot. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? You visit her every day. You eat meals with her. You're learning her language. Face the facts, Jake. You're falling for an alien refugee, and it's affecting your judgment. Before Jake could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the colony. The communication center crackled to life with an urgent message. "Attention new. Haven Colony," came a cold Zephyrian voice. "You are harboring stolen property of the Zephyrian Empire. Return the exile immediately, or face the consequences." Jake felt his stomach drop. Through the window, he could see lights in the sky. Zephyrian ships were approaching the colony. "Sir," came Kevin Walsh's voice over the radio, "we have 12 Zephyrian fighters incoming. They're demanding we surrender." The alien female. Jake looked at Lisa, who was staring at him with an expression that clearly said, "I told you so." "What are your orders, sir?" Kevin asked. Jake thought about Lyra, probably terrified in her quarters, as she heard the Zephyrian voices demanding her return. He thought about what would happen to her if he gave her back to her people. He thought about the healthy plants growing in the test field. Then he thought about the 3,000 humans counting on him to keep them safe. "Tell them we need time to consider their request," Jake said finally. But even as he said it, he knew what his real answer would be. He had saved Lyra once. He was not going to abandon her now, no matter what it cost. The Zephyrian ships stayed in orbit above New Haven Colony for 3 days, like dark clouds waiting to bring a storm. Jake had asked for time to consider their demands, but he already knew what he had to do. He found Lyra in the greenhouse, tending to the test plants that had saved the colony's crops. Her hands moved gently among the green leaves, checking each one for signs of health or disease. She had not spoken much since the Zephyrian ships arrived. "They want me back," she said without looking up. "I heard the messages." "Yes," Jake admitted, "but that doesn't mean I'm going to give you to them." Lyra finally looked at him. Her dark eyes were sad, but not surprised. "You should. I am not worth a war between our peoples." "Let me decide what you're worth," Jake said firmly. Over the past weeks, Jake had learned more about Lyra's story. She had been cast out not just for being unable to have children, but because her inability to breed was seen as a curse that might spread to others. Her own mate had publicly rejected her to save his reputation. But Jake had also learned about her gifts. Lyra understood plants and soil in ways that amazed even Diana Ross, who had studied agriculture for years. She could look at a sick plant and know exactly what it needed. She could smell the health of soil with her nose. Most importantly, she could create fertilizers that made earth crops grow in alien dirt. "I have been thinking," Lyra said as she worked, "about your food problems. The fertilizer I made is good, but it is not the best solution." "What do you mean?" Lyra led him to a table where she had drawn diagrams of plant root systems and soil layers. Her artistic skills were impressive, and her drawings were detailed and accurate. "Your people try to grow earth plants in alien soil," she explained. "This is like trying to make fish live in trees. Better solution is to change the soil completely, or find plants that like this kind of ground." Jake studied her drawings. "Can you do that? Change the soil? Not quickly. Would take many years. But I know of other plants, hybrid types that my people developed long ago. They grow well here and are good food for humans. Why didn't you mention this before?" Lyra looked uncomfortable. "Seeds are in old places. Sacred places. My people would be very angry if outsiders went there." "But you could get them? Maybe, if I was not exile. If I had permission." She laughed bitterly. "But I am outcast. They would kill me before I could explain." That evening, Jake called another council meeting. The mood in the room was tense. Everyone knew that the Zephyrians were losing patience. "We have 2 choices," Lisa Carter said bluntly. "Give them their exile back, or fight 12 ships with our 5 patrol craft." "It's not really a choice at all. There might be a third option," Jake said. He explained what Lyra had told him about the hybrid seeds and better farming methods. Kevin Walsh shook his head. Even if she's telling the truth, how does that help us now? The Zephyrians want her back today, not next year. What? If we could make a deal with them? Jake suggested. Trade something they want for permission to keep Lyra and access to their agricultural knowledge. What could we possibly have that they want? Diana asked. Ben Hayes spoke up. Actually, there might be something. I've been studying Lyra's biology, and I found something interesting. Her genetic markers are very unusual, even for a Zephyrian. She has combinations that I've never seen before. What does that mean? Jake asked. I'm not sure yet, but there are old references in the colony's database about this planet's history. Before the Zephyrians settled here, there was another species. They called them the Architects. Most people think they're just legends, but what if they're not? Jake was about to ask more questions when alarms started blaring again. This time, it was not Zephyrian ships approaching. It was a single shuttle requesting permission to land. It's a Zephyrian diplomatic craft, Kevin reported. They want to talk. An hour later, Jake stood in the colony's main conference room facing a tall, imposing Zephyrian male. Overlord Vexcar wore elaborate robes and had scars on his face that showed his high rank. Behind him stood 2 guards with energy weapons. I am here to collect our property, Vexcar announced in perfect human speech. The exile you have stolen belongs to the Zephyrian Empire. She's not property, Jake said calmly. She's a person, and she's asked for asylum. Vexcar's eyes flashed with anger. Exiles have no rights. They are dead to us. You have no authority to grant asylum to the dead. Under human law, I do. Human law means nothing here. This is our world. You are guests who have overstayed their welcome. Jake felt the tension in the room rise. Lisa and Kevin both had their hands near their weapons. But Jake had an idea. What if I told you that Lyra might be the key to something much more valuable than one failed breeder? Vexcar's expression became curious despite himself. Explain. Dr. Hayes believes she has genetic markers connected to the Architects. If that's true, she might be able to access their technology. The Overlord went very still. The Architects are myths. Are they? Your own records mention ruins in the southern continent. Structures that your people have never been able to enter or understand. Jake was gambling now, based on fragments of information from the colony's databases and things Lyra had mentioned. But he could see that his words were having an effect. Even if such a connection existed, Vexcar said slowly, the exile is still ours by law. Then let's make a new law, Jake said. I claim Lyra as my battle companion under human military tradition. That makes her a full citizen of New Haven Colony, with all the rights and protections that come with it. The room went dead silent. Lisa Carter's face went pale. Kevin Walsh actually took a step backward. Even the Zephyrian guards looked shocked. In human colonial law, claiming someone as a battle companion was essentially a marriage declaration. It was an old military tradition that had been brought into the colonial charter. Jake had just publicly declared Lyra as his mate. You cannot be serious, Lisa whispered, but Jake was looking at Vexcar, whose expression had changed from anger to something like respect. You would bond with an exile? The Overlord asked. Risk your position and your people's safety for one worthless female? She's not worthless, Jake said firmly. And yes, I would. Vexcar was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, if you truly believe she has value, prove it. You have 7 days to show us that this exile can access Architect technology. If she succeeds, we will recognize your claim and allow her to remain. If she fails, you will surrender her to us for proper execution. And if she succeeds, you'll also give us access to the Zephyrian agricultural databases so we can grow food properly. Agreed, Vexcar said. 7 days. After the Zephyrians left, The human council exploded into arguments. Lisa demanded that Jake reconsider his decision. Kevin warned that he was risking everyone's lives for one alien. Diana worried about the technical challenges they would face, but Ben Hayes had a different concern. Jake, do you realize what you just did? You claimed Lyra as your mate in front of witnesses. Under colonial law, that's binding. Jake nodded. I know. Do you love her? Ben asked quietly. Jake thought about the question. He thought about Lyra's gentle hands in the garden, her quick mind solving problems that had stumped his best people, her sad smile when she talked about her past. He thought about how safe and understood she seemed when they were together. Yes, he said finally. I think I do. But first, they had to find out if she really could unlock the secrets of the architects. And they had only 7 days to do it. That night, Jake went to find Lyra. She was sitting in the greenhouse, looking up at the stars through the transparent roof. She had heard about his declaration, and her face was full of emotions he could not read. Why? She asked simply. Jake sat down beside her. Because you deserve better than being thrown away. Because you've saved our crops and maybe our whole colony. Because I care about you. Lyra was quiet for a long time. Then she said, in 7 days, I may be dead. Are you sure you want to tie your life to mine? Jake took her scaled hand in his human one. I'm sure. She looked down at their joined hands, so different in size and texture, but somehow fitting. Together perfectly. Then I will try to be worthy of your faith in me, she said softly. Tomorrow, they would begin the search for architect ruins and the technology that might save them both. But tonight, Jake was content to sit with Lyra under the alien stars, knowing that whatever happened, they would face it together. The ancient ruins lay half buried in the red sand of Kepler 442b's southern desert. Jake and Lyra stood at the edge of what had once been a great city, now reduced to broken towers and collapsed buildings that stretched to the horizon. The architects built this place long before my people came to this world, Lyra said, her voice filled with wonder. Our oldest stories say they could make dead planets bloom with life. Jake checked his scanner. I'm reading massive energy signatures underground. Whatever powered this place is still active after thousands of years. They had been searching for 3 days, following fragments of maps from the colony database and ancient Zephyrian texts that Lyra remembered from her studies. Time was running out. In 4 more days, Overlord Dexcar would return for his answer. Behind them, their small team of volunteers prepared equipment. Ben Hayes carried medical supplies and scanners. Diana Ross brought engineering tools and portable computers. 2 security guards, Marcus Chun and Amy Baker, watched for dangers. There, Lyra pointed to a building that was different from the others. Where most of the ruins were made of stone, this structure seemed to be carved from a single piece of black crystal. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly in the red sunlight. As they approached the crystal building, Jake's radio crackled with urgent messages from the colony. Sir, we have a problem, came Kevin Walsh's voice. Zephyrian forces are attacking our outer settlements. They're not waiting for the 7 days to be up. Jake felt his heart sink. How many ships? 20 fighters and 3 heavy cruisers. They're targeting our farms and mining operations. Lisa has ordered all civilians to the main colony, but we can't hold out long against those numbers. Jake looked at Lyra, who had heard every word. Her face was pale with fear and guilt. This is my fault, she said. They are angry that you protected me. Your people will die because of me. No, Jake said firmly. They'll die if we don't find what we're looking for. How long until they reach the main colony, Kevin? 6 hours, maybe 8 if we're lucky. Hold them off as long as you can. We're going into the ruins now. Jake turned off the radio and faced his team. Anyone who wants to go back to help defend the colony can leave now. I won't think less of you. Marcus and Amy exchanged glances. We're staying, sir, Marcus said. If there's something in there that can help, we need to find it. The entrance to the crystal building was sealed by a door covered in the same glowing symbols. Lyra approached it slowly, studying the patterns. I cannot read the words, she said, but these symbols, they look familiar, like something from dreams I had as a child. She placed her scaled hand against the door. The moment her skin touched the crystal, the symbols blazed with bright light. The door dissolved like water, revealing a corridor that stretched into darkness. Well, that's definitely not normal, Diana muttered, checking her instruments. The energy readings just went off the charts. They walked deeper into the building, their flashlights revealing walls covered with more symbols and strange devices that might have been computers or art or something else entirely. The air hummed with power dot. At the center of the building, they found a large circular chamber. In the middle of the room stood a pillar of the same black crystal as the walls, but this one was different. It pulsed with internal light that matched the rhythm of a heartbeat. Jake, Ben said quietly, look at Lyra. Jake turned and saw that Lyra's eyes had begun to glow with the same light as the crystal. She was staring at the pillar as if hypnotized. I can hear it, she whispered. It's calling to me. Lyra, wait, Jake started to say, but she was already walking toward the pillar. The moment she touched it, everything changed. Dot light exploded through the chamber, so bright that everyone had to close their eyes. When it faded, they saw Lyra standing, with both hands pressed against the crystal. Her entire body glowing with energy. Images filled the air around them like holograms. They saw the planet as it had been thousands of years ago, green and fertile with vast oceans and floating cities. They saw the architects themselves, tall beings of pure energy who had shaped worlds with their will. They knew, Lyra said, but her voice sounded different, older and deeper. They knew their time was ending. They prepared this world for those who would come after. What do you mean? Jake asked. More images appeared. The architects had built machines deep underground, machines that could transform entire planets. But they needed someone with the right genetic code to activate them. Someone whose ancestors had been touched by architect energy long ago. The Zephyrians were not the first to settle this world, Lyra continued, still glowing with crystal light. My bloodline carries architect markers. That is why I could not breed with normal Zephyrians. I was never meant to create more of my kind. I was meant for this. Jake's radio exploded with urgent voices. The battle above was getting worse. Sir, we've lost the outer perimeter, Kevin reported. Zephyrian ground forces are landing. They'll be at the main colony in 2 hours. Can you activate the architect machines? Jake asked Lyra urgently. I can try, she said, but it will change everything. The whole planet will be transformed. Your people and mine will have to learn to live in a new world. Better than not living at all, Diana said. Lyra nodded and pressed both hands deeper into the crystal. The light around her grew brighter and spread to other crystals throughout the chamber. Then it began to spread beyond the building itself. Jake felt the ground shake beneath his feet. Outside, pillars of light erupted from hidden crystals across the desert. The energy spread like wildfire, racing toward both the human colony and the Zephyrian cities. What's happening? Amy asked, her voice tight with fear. Transformation, Lyra said. The architects left machines to remake this world. The terraforming process will take days to complete, but it has begun. Jake's radio crackled again. Sir, something's happening up here. The Zephyrian ships have stopped attacking. They're just floating there, and the sky is changing color. Jake looked at his team. Ben was recording everything with his scanners. Guyana was trying to understand the technology around them. Marcus and Amy were watching the exits in case they needed to fight their way out. "Will it work?" Jake asked Lyra. "I do not know," she admitted, "but I feel the machines waking up. They have been sleeping for so long, waiting for someone to call them. Now they remember their purpose." The chamber filled with new images. They showed vast underground networks of machines that could purify air, create fertile soil, and regulate climate. They showed gardens that could grow any kind of plant, cities that could house millions, oceans that could support countless forms of life. But they also showed the price. The transformation would destroy many existing structures. Cities would have to be rebuilt. Ecosystems would change completely. Both humans and Zephyrians would have to adapt to a new kind of world. "We should go," Ben said. "The energy levels in here are getting dangerous for prolonged exposure." Jake looked at Lyra, still glowing with architect power. "Can you stop the process now, if you want to?" "No," she said. "It is done. The machines will not sleep again for 1,000 years." They made their way out of the crystal building and back toward their transport. Around them, the desert was already beginning to change. New plants were sprouting from the sand, and the air smelled cleaner and richer as they flew back toward New Haven Colony. Jake could see the transformation spreading across the landscape like a slow wave. Rivers were forming where there had been only dry ground. Forests were growing at impossible speed. The red sky was turning blue when they reached the colony. They found a very different situation than the one they had left. The Zephyrian ships were still in orbit, but they were no longer attacking. Instead, both human and Zephyrian representatives were standing together in the colony's main plaza, staring up at the changing sky. Overlord Thexkar approached as Jake's team landed. "What have you done?" the Zephyrian leader asked. But his tone was not angry. It was amazed. "We found what we were looking for," Jake said. "Lyra activated the architect machines. The planet is being terraformed." Thexkar looked at Lyra, who was still glowing faintly with residual energy. "You truly are connected to them. The old bloodlines. We thought those genetic markers were a curse, but they were a gift. A gift for all of us," Lyra said. "The machines will make this world capable of supporting many more people. Both humans and Zephyrians can thrive here now." Jake looked around at the faces surrounding them. Some were fearful, some excited, some confused. But all of them were looking at a future that was very different from what they had expected. The war was over. The transformation had begun. Now they had to figure out how to build a new world together. 6 months after the Great Transformation, Jake stood on the balcony of New Haven's rebuilt council building and watched the sunrise over a world that still amazed him every day. Where once there had been red desert and dying crops, now there were vast fields of green plants that fed both humans and Zephyrians. Rivers sparkled in the morning light, and the sky was the same blue as Earth's. "The morning briefing is ready," Lyra said as she joined him on the balcony. She moved more gracefully now, no longer the frightened exile he had found dying in the wasteland. The architect energy had changed her, making her taller and stronger, but her gentle nature remained the same. Jake's smiled as she slipped her hand into his. They had been officially married 3 months ago in a ceremony that combined human, Zephyrian, and newly discovered architect traditions. The event had been broadcast across the planet as a symbol of the new cooperation between species. "How are the food production numbers looking?" Jake asked as they walked toward the council chamber. "Better than we hoped," Lyra replied. "The hybrid crops I developed are producing 3 times more food than either species could grow separately. We will have enough to feed everyone on the planet and still have surplus to trade." The council chamber had been redesigned to accommodate both human and Zephyrian representatives. The joint government they had formed was still new and sometimes awkward, but it was working. Jake served as the human representative, while Overlord Thexkar spoke for the Zephyrians. "Good morning, everyone," Jake said as he took his seat. Around the table sat the people who had helped build this new world. Ben Hayes was now the Joint Colony's chief medical officer, studying the health benefits of the transformed environment. Diana Ross led the engineering teams that were learning to work with architect technology. Even Kevin Walsh and Lisa Carter had found new roles in the combined security and administrative structure. Lisa had been one of the hardest to convince about the changes. She had opposed Jake's relationship with Lyra from the beginning and had been skeptical about working with the Zephyrians. But even she had to admit that the results spoke for themselves. The latest reports from the agricultural sectors show record harvests across all regions, Diana announced. The architect machines have created soil that is perfect for growing almost any kind of plant. We're seeing earth vegetables growing next to Zephyrian crystal fruits with no problems. Ben Hayes added his own good news. The medical benefits of the transformation continue to exceed our expectations. The air purification systems have eliminated most respiratory problems for both species. The water is cleaner than anything we've seen on any colony world. And Lyra's continued connection to the architect network allows us to make adjustments as needed. Thexkar spoke up from his position across the table. "My people have accepted the new reality faster than I expected. Many now believe that Lyra's exile was destiny, not punishment. She has become something of a legend among our youth." Jake looked at his wife, who blushed at the compliment. It was still strange to think that the same woman who had been left to die as worthless was now revered by both species as the key to their survival. "There is something else we need to discuss," Lyra said. "The architect network has been showing me new information. There are other worlds where the same technology exists, planets that could be transformed if someone with the right genetic markers activated their systems." "Are you suggesting we should leave?" Kevin asked with concern. "No," Lyra replied. "But there may be other species out there who need help, just as humans needed help when their crops were failing. The architects left their gifts for all life, not just for us." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "Something to consider for the future. But for now, we have enough work building our new society here." After the meeting, Jake and Lyra walked through the transformed city. New Haven had grown dramatically as more humans arrived from other colonies that were struggling with their own problems. At the same time, many Zephyrians had relocated from their traditional cities to be part of the joint community. The streets were filled with the sounds of both languages as children of both species played together. Human teenagers learned too. 10 Zephyrian crystal gardens, while young Zephyrians studied human engineering techniques. They stopped at the memorial that had been built to honor those who had died during the brief war before the transformation. It was a reminder that cooperation had not come easily or without cost. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked Lyra as they stood before the memorial. "Leaving your old life behind, even though it was painful?" Lyra considered the question seriously. "I regret the suffering that came before. I regret that some had to die. But I do not regret the choice to activate the architect machines. And I do not regret accepting your protection when I was dying in the desert, even though it led to all this responsibility. Being the bridge between worlds is not an easy job." Lyra smiled and touched the small pendant she wore around her neck, a crystal fragment from the architect pillar that allowed her to stay connected to the planetary network. "I was always meant for this," she said. "I just did not know it when I was young and desperate to fit into the role my people expected of me." The architects knew that someday their worlds would need caretakers. They planted the seeds in bloodlines like mine thousands of years ago. That evening, They attended the wedding of Marcus Chun and a young Zephyrian female named Zaralyn. It was the fifth mixed-species marriage since the transformation, and each one was celebrated as a sign of growing unity. Jake watched the couple exchange vows that combined elements from both cultures. Marcus promised to honor Zaralyn's connection to the Crystal Gardens. Zaralyn vowed to protect Marcus with the fierce loyalty of a Zephyrian warrior. "They look happy," Lyra observed. "They do," Jake agreed. "Though I bet they'll face some of the same challenges we did in the beginning." Jake thought back to their own early days as a couple. Learning to communicate across species barriers had been difficult. Understanding each other's cultures and customs had taken time. There had been moments when Jake wondered if love was really enough to bridge such differences. But they had worked through the problems together, just as the colony as a whole was learning to blend human and Zephyrian ways of life. After the wedding celebration, Jake and Lyra walked home under stars that seemed brighter than they had been before the transformation. Their house was a blend of human and Zephyrian architecture, with large windows that looked out over the gardens where earth roses grew beside alien crystal blooms. "I have news," Lyra said as they sat on their porch, watching the night sky. "Good. News, I hope?" "The Architect Network has been monitoring my health since the transformation, and suspected it, but now we have confirmation." Lyra paused, her eyes bright with excitement and a little fear. "I am carrying a child." Jake felt his heart stop for a moment. "A child? But I thought you couldn't." "I could not breed with Zephyrians because my genetics were different. But human DNA is compatible with the architect modifications in my system. Ben says the child will be healthy and will carry traits from both of our species." Jake pulled her into his arms, overwhelmed with joy and wonder. After everything Lyra had been through, after being cast out for her inability to have children, she was now carrying the first human Zephyrian hybrid child. "Are you scared?" he asked. "A little," she admitted. "This child will be unique, the first of a new kind of person. There will be challenges we cannot imagine, but also possibilities we cannot imagine," Jake said. "Just like everything else that has happened since I found you in the desert." They sat together in comfortable silence, looking out over the world they had helped to create. In the distance, they could see the lights of both human and Zephyrian settlements, no longer separate, but part of one growing community. Children were playing in the streets even this late in the evening, their laughter carrying on the warm night air. Some were human, some were Zephyrian, and they played together without any thought of the differences that had once divided their parents. "What do you think the future holds?" Lyra asked. Jake considered the question. There would certainly be challenges ahead. Building a truly integrated society would take generations. There were still some members of both species who opposed the changes, and Lyra's suggestion about helping other worlds would eventually have to be addressed. But there would also be wonders they had not yet discovered. The architect technology continued to reveal new capabilities. The planet itself was still changing, becoming more beautiful and more capable of supporting life every day. Most importantly, they had proven that love could bridge any gap, that cooperation was stronger than conflict, and that sometimes what others saw as weakness could actually be the greatest strength of all. "I think," Jake said finally, "that we are going to build something amazing together. All of us." Lyra smiled and placed her hand over her still flat stomach where their child was growing. The first child of a new world, born from the union of species that had once been enemies. "Yes," she said softly. "I think we are." Above them, the transformed sky sparkled with stars and the gentle glow of architect crystals that continued their ancient work of nurturing life. And in the growing city below, humans and Zephyrians worked and played and lived together, building the future one day at a time. The exile, who had been thrown away for being Barren, had become the mother of a new civilization. And the human who had risked everything to save her had found that sometimes the greatest rewards come from the most unlikely places. Their story was just beginning.